This is Chuck Schaefer of Customer.tv, and today I'm joined by Chris Buchholz, editor of CRM Outsiders and recognized thought leader on the topic of social CRM. The purpose of our discussion today is to explore social CRM understanding, adoption, use cases, benefits, payback, and risks. Chris, you have penned many articles and delivered many presentations on the topic of social CRM. How do you describe social CRM to a business leader or IT professional trying to get his or her head squarely around this topic?
Yeah, I think social CRM is one of these things where people are kind of overthinking it a little bit. I think in a lot of cases, we know how social media works from our private lives. And the problem is jamming that into a business context is difficult for some people because they fall back on more traditional metrics of how things are supposed to work, quote unquote, best practices. In social CRM and social media, this is all new. It involves customer groups that are unique to each business. And so the idea of best practices is not quite as cut and dried as it is in some other parts of business. So that's the first hurdle to get past, is to start telling people, listen, you've got to imagine this in the context of your business. It requires you to do some extra mental work to understand what this actually means. Then it becomes a situation where, again, don't default back to what you're used to. Don't see social as a broadcasting medium for your message. It's a great way to collect information, certainly in the CRM context, about customers, but it's also a great way to initiate conversations and engage with customers in new ways. So if the idea is to build better customer relationships, why aren't you using these resources to actually do that on a one-to-one to many basis? In other words, talk to customers in public so other customers see how that interaction works. So there's two parts to this. There's the collection of data, which is classic CRMs type stuff, and there's the engagement in these conversations, which leads to more data. So you get the cycle going. So talking to business leaders about this is tough because it's tough for them to initially see the ROI in that. They see it as kind of a loosey-goosey, touchy-feely sort of thing. The reality is there are lots of ROI models out there. I recommend Natalie Pedohoff and Kathy Herman's models. They were the first ones to write them up. They can help you explain and understand exactly why you would do this and why it's an important thing for your business. I think that intrinsically people understand that they need to be involved in social media. They need to use it to help kickstart their CRM efforts. They understand the value of it from a generic term, but they don't quite have the ROI part nailed down. So if you need help with that, I'd say reach out, because there are people developing this all the time. That is the next, I think, in a lot of ways, the next gold rush for consultants is developing these ROI models for social CRM. This is a revolutionary thing. It's not an evolutionary thing. I think mobile CRM is evolutionary. Mobile CRM is doing very well because people just see it as CRM done someplace else. Social is doing CRM in a totally different way. It requires different thinking, and obviously that's difficult within a business. You're trying to run the business and at the same time imagine where it's going to be in 2 years. It could be very different. So my recommendation is if you can't envision what social CRM is going to look like in the context of your company, look around for help. Look for a third party who can help you do this. Just like in the past with CRM, if you can't envision what CRM looks like in your organization, reach out for some help. So it's very little different from that, although it's a very revolutionary take on what we're doing with CRM.
Very good points. Thank you for that. Chris, the CRM industry has been talking about social CRM and social media for quite some time, yet this is one of those topics where there may be more talk than action for many companies. Where do you think we are in terms of broad-scale social CRM adoption, and what's holding back businesses from taking action?
Yeah, I think we're still in the infancy of this. I think that very few companies have really nailed it. You always hear the same names. You hear Zappos and you hear the traditional suspects doing it right. And the reason we hear the same names over and over again is because not many people have really moved that far down the road. I think that a great place to start for companies is to look tactically. I think too many people look at social CRM as this all-encompassing global thing that revolutionizes your business and they get scared off. I think if you look at it tactically and say, where are my pain points? Again, it's very much like traditional CRM. Where are my pain points? Where can this new capability help me out? And how do I apply it? Just to that area, and then land and expand. That's really the way to go. So that's where I think a lot of businesses are, and I think a lot of businesses are sort of exploring it. It's again, it's a situation where a lot of employees internally may be using social in ways that their supervisors, business leaders don't actually know about yet. I think that's going on quite a bit, and I think that there's still a need to step back from looking at this as an IT issue as well. It's really funny. A lot of these things are kind of artifacts of the traditional CRM era, where IT was heavily involved in what should be line of business decisions, for instance, or salespeople or marketers are bringing in technologies without telling IT, so you don't have a unified view of what's going on. So one of the things I always recommend to people is step back, look at your past experience with CRM. If you've been doing CRM correctly, look at your past experience and what fell down, because those are things where you're going to fall down with social CRM. So there's not a lot of businesses who have completely embraced this overarching global view of what social CRM can be. There are some folks who are doing it well in some aspects, but I don't think we're all the way there yet. And I don't think it's a matter of waiting for a vendor to provide a solution. I think it's waiting for business leaders to really seize upon their new opportunities with customers.
Chris, you talked about identifying pain points. Can you identify some of the business processes or use cases where you've seen social CRM deliver big results?
Yeah, I think that CRM is usually driven by sales, and I've seen some companies that have really figured out how to use social tools, social CRM, effectively during the sales process. One of the example here at Sugar, one of our guys figured out how to use LinkedIn in a really smart way to figure out not just people who are looking for CRM products, but people who are looking for CRM products through our competitors, reaching out to those folks. So he's building a social process into his sales process, and that feeds into the CRM system. And then you've got essentially a set of workflows that is enabled by social media. That's really kind of what you're looking at social media or social CRM these days. It's sort of in that early phase. Another good example is there's an insurance company. Before their agents call customers, part of the process, part of the workflow, built in, locked into how they work, is they hit Inside View. And Inside View gives the agent an idea of who this person is, what his title is, if he owns a home, if he owns a boat, if he's got a family. If you're an insurance agent, you're putting together a quote, you can then take that information and have that information on your desk in the form of quotes when you make the call. You don't have to fumble around asking the customer for this information, keep him on the phone longer than he has to be, and then the customer feels like you actually know him reasonably well at the time of the call. So again, these tactical things are really useful. I think that I encourage people in different aspects of the business to look at how just a component of social can help them do things better. Marketing is an obvious one. I think you see a lot of B2C companies using social media to try to reach out via marketing. That's very common. I think you can do it in B2B too. I think the B2B and B2C barrier is kind of eroding thanks to social. In fact, with B2B, you've got a much smaller audience to reach. It's more like Facebook than it is like Twitter, for instance. You're communicating with specific people, and I think that even service and support, huge opportunities here to cash in on what's going on socially with your customers. I think that if you're as a business, if you can put together ways to bring the social information in-house about what people are saying about your products or your services, then and you build a process for that information to travel from whoever is the gatekeeper for that internally to whoever can provide satisfaction to those customers, whether it's somebody in technical support, somebody in marketing, somebody in sales. I think you're way ahead of the game, because the studies have shown repeatedly that most requests for help from companies about specific products, specific brands via social media go ignored. And so if your competitor is ignoring it and you're doing at least a basic job, you've got a leg up on that competitor.
Good points for sure. And with that, we're at a good break point to conclude our conversation. This is Chuck Schaefer of Customer.tv, and I've been joined by Chris Buchholz, editor of CRM Outsiders. Chris, thanks for your conversation and insights, and thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Chuck.